Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the pre-show for the January 2020 to 21001 A+ study group. It's 2020. The first study group of the year. This is fantastic. Thank you for being here. I'm just getting my screens here set up so that I can see. There's the chat room. Hi, chat room. Question in the chat room. Do I have vouchers? Do I sell vouchers at a discount? I do not sell vouchers, and I do not have voucher discounts. I'm so sorry. I do not. That would be nice, though, wouldn't it? But I don't have any. So sad. Does not happen. They reserve that for CompTIA partners, and I'm not a CompTIA partner. Let's see if I can get my MacBook going. There we go. Getting things going here. It's been so long since I've done a study group. I did a study group before Christmas, and then it's been weeks. So there's all these buttons. I'm not really sure what they do. They do something. We'll figure it out as we go. Welcome to the chat room. We're going to get started in just a few minutes, in about 8 minutes and 10 seconds. How's that? We'll get started with the study group, where the first hour I will ask you questions that come directly from the 22001 exam objectives, and you get to answer online. I'll show you how all that works in just a moment once we get started. And in the second hour, we'll see how I'm able to do. We're going to open up the phone lines, and you can always ask questions in the chat room in that second hour as well. Good. Also, in the chat room, thank you for your help. Mid-December, after the Security Plus study group, able to pass my Security Plus exam. Congratulations. That's fantastic. That's a tough exam, too. So that had to feel good at the end of the year, beginning of the new year. That gets things going in the right direction. So you got to love that. Doug in the chat room, you passed A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus in 4 months. That's a marathon. You must have watched my courses 5 times each. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. I'm glad to hear you. I did the easy part. You had to watch the courses multiple times and take the exam. So congratulations. So that's fantastic. We've got about 7 minutes left. We'll get things started. I'm just making sure things are going. We've got recordings going down here. You can see the Cylons going there at the bottom right. I've got a recording going up here. That's my streaming system up there, or video from my streaming system. I have a video matrix here, so I can put any video on any screen that I would like. And that's the video right now coming from the other room, my data center, which is just a rack in a closet. It's my data center where I've got my streaming device set up. And I've got overhead, you can't see it, but overhead are all the cables, all the video cables. They come out of these systems and they go overhead and they go into the data center and they come back out again. So we got plenty of cables everywhere. I also have cables going under the floor. So there's cables above me and cables below me. Jokers to the left of me. So here we are. We've got, hopefully everybody had a great New Year's. This was something we did our last study group before Christmas, so it's been a number of weeks. I didn't do much of anything. That's not true. I did take a little trip. I did a little holiday trip before Christmas, and then came back home and hung out for a while. It's kind of nice to be here, although I was busy writing. I'm always writing something. There's always content going. There's always something happening here. So I never stop. It's rare that I would stop. But there were times there I did take a little trip and stopped for at least a week. That was kind of nice. So, but now we're back. Now it's the New Year's. Now everybody needs to get their certifications. Now everybody wants to get a new job. Now everybody has all of these plans, and I want to help. So we're going to figure out how to make that happen for you. Figure out how all of this works together to make all of those things happen to you. Not really to you, more for you. Not really, don't want it to happen to you. That's the way Didn't sound right. All right, there's the notifications for the study group. That means the emails have gone out, the tweets have gone out, the LinkedIn posts, the Facebook content. So we'll have 5 minutes to go and we'll get started. 4.5 minutes. We've got, what else? Mics are good. Really, all of this, nothing gets changed between study groups. None of this goes away. My monitors are on enormous monitor bars, so I can lift them up. I can move them forward. So that's the only thing that really changes between study groups is I'll pick this monitor up and I'll bring it closer to me because it's a, what is this, a 27-inch monitor? And so I need it, I'm old, so I need it right about here. You can't see that. I need it right about there. I need the monitor right about there so I can see it properly. That's not true. But I like to get it closer so I can see everything on the screen. These move around. They kind of surround me. But that's the only thing that really changes between study groups. Everything, I just push these back because if I didn't, the camera, you can see the camera. It's kind of peeking up there. It looks like it's blocked by this monitor, but it's not. That camera is the one that is the head cam. That's the face cam. So that's the one I have to move the monitor out of the way so that you can see things and figuring out those things. In the chat room, the CompTIA exam book feels like it gives too many unnecessary details that are not covered in my video. Well, that may be true. But it's a book. That's one of the differences. A book can give you all of this extra content, all of this extra data, and kind of fill in the edges. Now, is it necessary that you have all of that content to pass the exam? Probably not, but the best arbiter of that is really going to be the CompTIA exam objectives. The exam objectives say that you should know it, then you should know it. If the CompTIA exam objectives say nothing about it, then I wouldn't bother doing that. So why would you study something that CompTIA says you don't have to study? So that's one of the challenges. And it's true. The books are written where they take 1001 and 1002 and they kind of cram them together into one book. And I don't think that does anybody much help these days. It used to be that the content between the two exams was very intertwined with each other. It was very related to each other. So you would learn about hardware in the first exam, and then you would troubleshoot hardware in the second exam. But then they changed the format back in the 800, 700, 800 series, where the two exams are now very standalone. When you study hardware in exam 1, you troubleshoot hardware in exam 1. When you study networking in exam 1, you troubleshoot networking in exam 1. There's not a lot of overlap now between the exams, but the books still combine all of these things together. It's very difficult once you've written a book to go back and pull these things out into different formats. I get it. I understand why they do it that way. It would probably serve people better if they had one book that had kind of a volume 1 in the first half of the book for the core 1 exam, and then a volume 2, maybe the second half of the book's core 2, but they just don't do that for some reason. I wish they did. Wish they did. So it'd make a lot more sense to me if they did it that way. We're almost ready to get started. 1 minute to go. 1 minute, Mr. Sinatra. And we will get things going with this. This is not the study group. For those of you that have tuned in wondering, why are we looking at the back of this guy's head? This is not the study group. We have other things to do here. Make sure all of my things are working here. Yep. Can't really see it. You can sort of see the bottom of the screen. I have an enormous, like 55-inch television that's up here above everything where I'm seeing what's going on. So that looks good. That all looks like it's supposed to be. So we'll figure out the details. I don't know if the Pearson Exam Cram book is formatted that way or not. It'd be great if it is. If you find a book like that, maybe that's somebody's already thought about that. I've only been doing that for 13, 14 years. That way. It just seems to be obvious that that's the way you would do it. But things are not always obvious in our industry. Let's get a sip of some tea. And I think it's time for study group, everybody. Let's see if we can get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 2020 A+ study group from your friends here at Messer Studios. My name is James Messer. I will be your host for this first hour of Q&A, where I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA 220-1001 Core 1 A+ study group exam objectives. And then the second hour, I usually turn it around. I usually open up the phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room, and we just have, you can ask me almost anything. Doesn't have to be about the A+. We'll talk about whatever you'd like in that second hour. We've got plenty of things to go through today. Now, to make this happen, I'm going to ask you questions. And the way that you answer those questions is you can open up a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. And when you go there, it will redirect you over to a site called Socrative. And it will ask you, in some cases, for a room name, especially if you use the Socrative student app. Then you can put the room name Professor Messer in there, PROFESSORMESSER. And that will get you into the Q&A. And if you do all of those things right now, there is indeed a question waiting for you. We call this our rewind question. You can find that question by going to professormesser.com/QA. The question, we call it our rewind question because it's a question from last month. The question asks, after replacing a laptop LCD screen, the stylus no longer interacts with the operating system. Which of the following would be the most likely cause of this issue? Would it be the inverter? Would it be NFC? Would it be digitizer? Would it be IR emitter? Or would it be Bluetooth? You go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answers. And of course, during the study group, no answers in the chat room, please. We do one of these study groups every month. And one of these things that we do is I ask the questions in the first hour, and then there's questions that you can ask me in the second hour. We'll learn more about that as we get closer to that second hour. Don't forget about us on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube. You can also join us on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter. One of the things you may have noticed for those of you that are Instagrammers, you'll notice that all the daily pop quiz questions are showing up on Instagram as well. You go to professormesser.com/Instagram. You can find that as well. I know the holidays are over, but if you are still purchasing things on Amazon, don't forget about us. You can, of course, use our Amazon link to get the lowest prices you always get at Amazon. But if you ever purchase anything, they give us a finder's fee for that. They give us a bit of a commission. You can find that link at professormesser.com/Amazon, an absolutely free way to help you support the site. You don't have to give me any money directly. Amazon helps support the site. You can think of it that way and being able to make that happen. Sometime during this first hour, I'm going to give you instructions and information on how you can earn 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. That's a continuing education unit credit. So be listening in that first hour. If you're someone who collects these CEUs, this might be helpful to you. Today, we're going to talk about questions that come from the 220-1001 A+ certification exam. As many of you know, you have to pass 2 exams to be able to make this certification happen for you. The 220-1001 and 1002 are also called the Core 1 and the Core 2. They were released in January of last year, so they've only been out a year, exclusively only about 6 months. So you will find these are relatively new exams compared to everything else. On a scale from 100 to 900, you have to get a 675 to be able to pass that exam. It's 90 minutes long. So there's a few things you do have to know. Now, if you are someone who studied for the 900 series exam and you're wondering, are there differences between the older exam and the newer exam? Yeah, about 20% different. And I've got a list of exactly what objectives have changed. I highlighted all the new objectives if you go to professormesser.com/objectives. Also, from that link, you can get the link to the objectives on the CompTIA website. So it's a good way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We've got plenty of those to go through. Today, we're going to focus on 1001, mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. Now, if you come back in a couple days on Thursday, we do another live stream where we focus on the Core 2 exam. So you're welcome to join us there, and we'll do exactly the same thing, except new questions for that different exam. Don't forget that my course is available online. Every minute of every video is available for you to watch absolutely free. There's no registration. There's no paywall. There's nothing extra you have to buy. I'm not holding any videos back. These are not pieces of videos. It's the entire course. So you can watch everything. Some people like to get a downloadable version that has video, audio, my course notes. You can find out about that at professormesser.com/download A+. This study group is also available in podcast form. If you have a podcast listening program that you would like to automatically download this when it's available, you can find out more about that at professormesser.com/podcast. That would be a good place you can go to get the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus study group podcasts. If you come back a day later than this, you'll notice that the YouTube video description has been updated with timestamps. This is something that my marketing manager, Lori, does. She has to listen to this whole thing all over again. Hi, Lori. She has to go through this, but she put timestamps in for everything. It takes her about a day. But you can go back well over a year now, all of our previous study groups, and go exactly to the content you're looking for. Just another way to help you find what you're looking for when you're trying to study for this. Let's go back to that question and see how you did. After replacing a laptop LCD screen, the stylus no longer interacts with the operating system. Which of the following would be the most likely cause of this issue? And our options were the inverter, NFC, the digitizer, the IR emitter, or Bluetooth. And you'll notice there is a list of these available. You can see that for some of you, you either knew this or you were here last month, because 85% of you chose C, digitizer, and that is indeed the right answer. If you're someone who's replacing or working on any of these new screens, they not only are screens that allow you to see the information, but you can interact with them. You can touch the screen. You can use a stylus on the screen. And to be able to do that, you have to make sure that the digitizer, which is the electrical components that allows the screen to see you touching it or know exactly where you are pushing on the screen or clicking it with that single stylus. That's something that is important. So you can't just replace the screen and then forget, oh yeah, I forgot to plug in the digitizer. That can be a big problem. And that's why if you did answer C, digitizer, 84% of you got that absolutely correct. And this question asks, which of these can be connected without following any particular port orientation? Would that be RJ45, RS232, HDMI, USB-C, or DisplayPort? Now, if you think you know the answers, do not answer in the chat room. You want to answer by going to professormesser.com/QA. That would be the correct way to do it. You can lock in your answer there. Hopefully you've been able to work with some of these technologies and feel very familiar with what these things happen to be. Whenever I start putting these things together and trying to figure out the question for what we want to be able to do with this, that's one where I want to be able to get you a question that's somehow perhaps even difficult to figure out. Some of these are easier to figure out, but it's one of these situations where if you work with the technology, then you know it right off the top of your head. And that's why I usually will say that you do want to watch the videos, but you do also want to be able to work with these things hands-on. You want to be able to try to use these. I think there's reading a book helps, watching a video helps, but there's something about hands-on labs, something about where you're touching it. It fires different synapses in the brain. I don't know what it is, but it helps me so much if I'm able to work with it. Even typing in commands helps me a lot with this as well. So hopefully that's something that can help you as you're trying to figure out, how do I figure out how to study better for these? It's never just one thing. Of course, watch the videos, get a good book, get some hands-on, get plenty of Q&A, and I think you'll be in really good shape for figuring out the details of what this might be. Hopefully. Maybe that can help you as well as you're going through this. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, which of these can be connected without following any particular port orientation? And we have 5 different technologies: RJ45, RS232, HDMI, USB-C, and DisplayPort. If we click how do we do, 80% of you say it's USB-C. That's a pretty strong majority for USB-C, and practically a 4-way tie for second place. 5 and 6% for RJ45, RS232, HDMI, and DisplayPort. Now, for those of you that have ever worked with any of these technologies, especially if you're trying to put it in on the back of a computer where you can't see things very well. You know that some of these have to be exactly right. RS-232 is a D-sub-miniature connector usually. So you have to make sure you are plugging it in the right way. Same thing for HDMI, same thing for DisplayPort. The only one on this list that does not matter, the orientation, is the fourth one on this list, USB-C, the one that 79% of you said, yep, that one is one where you don't have to know which way is up or down. You just plug it in. It's one of the big things the original USB creators said they wish they would have done from the onset, is make this a type of connector that didn't matter. Because as we know, USB, the older USB, you plug it in, it doesn't fit. You turn around, you plug it in, it doesn't fit. You turn around finally the third time, it finally goes into the connector. So they got rid of all of that with USB-C, which makes it so easy to be able to plug in USB-C and make that happen. Yeah, there are other particular ports where you don't have to worry about an orientation. I did not put one on this list in the chat room. Jack is correct. Another type of connector that does not care about orientation, Lightning. Lightning connector from Apple was specifically created by Apple to not only provide many different functionalities, but one that they really focused on was you can just plug it in. You don't have to figure out the way that it goes to be able to plug it in. They like to make it as easy as possible. So well done with that. USB-C, really the right one to use. If you don't have USB-C connectors on your device, you may want to get some of these where it just makes it so easy to plug in, and you've got the connector to be able to have that there. So that might help with some of those things. The only one on the list people are really asking about is the RS-232. That is a standard for serial communication. So RS-232 commonly uses a DB9 or a DB25 connector, but you also will see RS-232 signals sent over RJ45 for those connectors. But usually when we see the word RS-232, we naturally think of a DB25 or a DB9 or DE9, for those of you that are more pedantic. Those type of connectors are the ones that only fit a particular way. The D-sub-miniature is what those are. So well done with this. I think that was almost an easy slide into 2020 question. Let's see if we can get more difficult ones and see which ones might be available for the next question. Here's the next question, which asks, some of you are already asking about this in the chat room, which of the following would be most important on a computer with client-side virtualization? Which of the following would be most important on a computer with client-side virtualization? Would it be a wireless network connection? Would it be enhanced audio? Would it be VT support? Would it be an external mouse? Or would it be mobile device synchronization? Which of the following would be most important on a computer with client-side virtualization? Figure out those five, which are wireless network connection, enhanced audio, VT support, external mouse, or mobile device synchronization. If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no hints in the chat room either. We're going to figure this out. People want more virtualization questions. This is a category that is new on the 220-1001 Core 1 exam. It's an entire domain on virtualization. They just stuck it right in there in domain 4 and said, now you got an entire domain of virtualization, which is remarkable because there aren't that many topics in that domain relative to the other domains. So you tend to have a lot of questions show up on the exam that are very specific to virtualization. So hopefully that can help you as you're going through this. Be sure to figure out the details of this as you're trying to answer these questions and put these in. It's helpful to know these. And by the way, if you are someone who's already taken the Network Plus or the Security Plus, these are questions that are very similar to those exams. In fact, the exam objectives are almost identical in the Network Plus and Security Plus. So they've got a very much of a standard to go across all of those. Let's see how you did with this one. Which of the following would be the most important on a computer with client-side virtualization? 72% of you say it's VT support. 21% of you say wireless network connection. And then a single digits, 3% each say external mouse and mobile device synchronization. Only 1% said enhanced audio. How can you not have enhanced audio? That's the number one most important thing on my computer. It has to have enhanced audio. But we're not talking about my computer. We're talking about client-side virtualization to have this. I think the external mouse is kind of important too. But we have to also take this into account. What are we talking about on these devices that deal with client-side virtualization? If you are using a VirtualBox, here's a good example of client-side virtualization, absolutely free. You can download VirtualBox for free. You can download Windows virtual machines for free from Microsoft at modern.ie. So now you've downloaded VirtualBox, you've downloaded the virtual machine itself, and you can run that. So what would be most important on a computer that can do those things? Well, if we look at the resource requirements for virtualization on a desktop, one of the most important requirements, and you'll see this immediately if your machine does not have this, is the processor support. A lot of the virtualization happens in hardware itself these days in the CPU. And if this is an Intel CPU, then the CPU needs to support what Intel calls their virtualization technology, or VT. If this is an AMD device, then the AMD needs to be able to use AMD-V. Effectively does a similar thing in both of these, where the hardware of the CPU is providing functionality that supports this virtualization. You, of course, need plenty of memory because you will be running multiple operating systems on one single device. You'll need plenty of drive space or storage space because you will have multiple operating systems stored on a single device. That's not as horrible as it used to be. And, of course, your network needs to be able to communicate. If you need these devices or virtual machines to be able to communicate out to the real world, then there will need to be a network interface configured as well. Well, if you look at those single requirements, the CPU, the memory, the disk space, the network, and we look at what was available in our list, 73% of you were pretty spot on. VT support stands for that virtualization technology. That's what Intel calls that. So if you try to configure this in your computer and it says you don't have VT support on your Intel device, you may have to enable it in your BIOS, or you may have to look at the model of the CPU that you're using. If it's an older machine, it may not support virtualization technology. With some of this virtualization software that you would run on your desktop, some of them can take some of those technologies and run it as software. Others require that you have this. So hopefully that's one that might help you a little bit and be able to make that happen. I think that can help you as well. If you're ever trying to figure out, why is my virtualization not working? That may be a good way to figure those things out. So 72% of you spot on. You want to be sure you have VT support, and that way your VirtualBox, your VMware workstation, or whatever you're using to make this happen, that's all going to work properly on your system. One of the things you'll notice if you start looking at all of these exam objectives is these are dense exams. There's tons of content in these exams. And you'll notice from my videos, I have 137 A+ videos, 18 hours and 29 minutes of videos. That's a lot of videos to watch. And if you're taking notes as you go through, that's a lot of content to write down, because you're writing things down about hardware, about throughput, about virtualization, about networking, about security, about operating systems. It goes on and on and on and on. There's so much that you need to know. Not everybody has time to watch 137 videos over 18 hours and 29 minutes. And if you are, it might be even more difficult to write down detailed notes for every single one of these. So that's what I did for you. I created a series of notes that contain everything from my videos. These are the 220-1001 and the 220-1002 course notes. I have the 1001 course notes right here. As a matter of fact, it's a PDF that you can purchase right now. It is over 57 pages of content, and it takes information directly from my videos, video by video by video, with the pictures, the text, the content, everything on here, even the pictures of what is there, all the details. If there's graphs or charts, it's all in this PDF file. I've already made these notes for you. So it's another way to have everything in one single place. Now, not only is there these course notes where you have this digital version, there's also a physical version. So you can either choose digital if you're a digital kind of person, or you can choose the physical if you like a physical book. I get it. The same information, it's the same book. There's nothing different between them. Some people just like to have a printed book. And you can see it's a perfect bound, nice high quality, nice paper, full color printed book. This is a real book. I'm not messing around here. And of course, if you do get the PDF, you could print the PDF as well. This is just printed and bound for you. If you do purchase the printed version, you get the digital version for free. So there's a little bonus there. If you're trying to figure out which one do I get, I don't want to miss anything. Well, you won't miss anything to have that there. You can find out more about this at professormesser.com/1000notes. It's also a great way to help support the website, keep things running here. We would not be able to do this without your support. So I want to thank you for the folks that have already purchased this and are using it. Thank you. And for the folks that are considering purchasing this as well, have a look. I want to thank you as well. Go to professormesser.com/1000notes to be able to do that. Very useful to have that. Let's do some more Q&A though. This would be another good way to help support the site. Let's see if you can get these answers. Here we go with all of this. Make sure some of this is available. Our next question up for bids is asking, the output of a laser printer looks correct, but touching any part of the page causes the text to smudge. Which of the following would be the most likely cause of this issue? Would it be bad toner? Would it be high voltage? Would it be a scratched photosensitive drum? Would it be an incorrect printer driver? Or would it be a bad fuser? Those are your 5 different options. The output of a laser printer looks correct, but touching any part of the page causes the text to smudge. Which of the following would be the most likely cause of this issue? Have a look at this. If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to instead go to professormesser.com/QA. Now in the chat room, Scott's asking, does anybody know if we need to memorize a list of CPUs and compatible sockets for the A+1001? There is no list of CPUs and no list of sockets on the 1001 exam objectives. If you're ever wondering, what do I need to study for this exam? You need to get the exam objectives. Type professormesser.com/objectives. If it's listed there, you need to know it. If it's not listed there, you don't need to know it. It's that simple. So feel free to have a look at those things. If you're ever trying to figure this out, do I need to know something? Is there a topic that I need to focus on? Are there certain things I need to know more than others? It's in the exam objectives. I know I say that just constantly. It's like a mantra. People are tired of me saying it, but there's so many people that haven't got their hands on it yet, and it is such a great resource. Make sure you do that. They genuinely won't test on anything not in the objectives. They don't tend to. They stay very, very, very close to the objectives, to the point that I tell people, just stick to the objectives. If you know everything listed in the exam objectives, you're going to do just fine on your exam. So that's what I would recommend you do as well. Let's have a look at those. Have a look at what the different options might be. Let's see how you did with this question, though, which talks about laser printers. We can't get enough laser printer troubleshooting, can we? The output of a laser printer looks correct, but touching any part of the page causes the text to smudge. Which of the following would be the most likely cause of this issue? Let's see how we did with this one. Again, everybody chose one particular answer. 76% of you said that's a bad fuser. So all of you with laser printers, you're thinking, yeah, I might have a bad fuser, but 16% of you said, it's bad toner. That toner's not sticking. It's got to be bad toner. 5% said a scratch photosensitive drum, 2% said high voltage, and then 1% said an incorrect printer driver. So hopefully that's one that you can have a look through, maybe figure out what it might be. If you're someone who is working through this final print on a laser printer, it comes out of the printer, it looks perfect, everything is exactly the way it should be, and you notice that you touch the page and that smudging happens. Suddenly the toner is all over your finger. That means the toner was not heated, it was not pressed into the page, and it is not permanently attached to that page. The one component that is able to fuse that to the paper is the fuser, just as the name implies. It heats it up, it melts the toner, it fastens it permanently to the page. That's what you're hoping for. And of course, if you're ever working through that, that may be a great way to figure out, well, that's what we're going to do is look at the fuser and see. Now, of course, if the paper comes out and the paper's cold, That's another good example. That fuser gets the paper nice and hot. It melts that toner, literally melts it to the page. So if it's not getting hot, well, then there you go. Yep, that's what you're going to be able to do, is work through those and figure out the details of that. That might help you too as you're trying to troubleshoot your laser printer and figuring out what the details are. Why is this not sticking to the page? And if you get a question like this on the exam where it's not sticking to the page, that's where you want to go, is look at that fuser. That'd be a great place to go to make that happen. Let's do another question. We've got some time to go through another question or two. Let's get another one on our list. You folks are doing so well with this one. Let's try a question that asks, a system administrator has been asked to configure an SMTP configuration on a mobile device. Which of the following would be the reason for this configuration? Would it be scan incoming mail for malicious software? Would it be to send email messages to a third party? Would it be to communicate over an encrypted tunnel? Would it be to send alerts to a management server? Or would it be to centrally manage the mobile device? Those are your 5 different options. A system administrator has been asked to configure an SMTP configuration on a mobile device. Which of the following would be the reason for this configuration? Would it be to scan incoming mail for malicious software? Would it be to send email messages to a third party? Would it be to communicate over an encrypted tunnel? Would it be to send alerts to a management server? Or would it be to centrally manage the mobile device? You think you know the answers, or the answer. There's only one here. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. I have some output here that's flickering. I'm trying to make it stop flickering. I think I did it. So see, we'll just have to look and see if we can figure this out. You may have to take this question and break it up into different pieces. One of the things I often tell people is there are a lot of acronyms on the exam. In fact, there's an entire list of acronyms in the back of the book, of the back of the exam objectives. A huge list of acronyms. And a lot of people focus on knowing what the words of the acronyms mean. They go through the process of knowing, they say SMTP and they know what SMTP stands for. But what you're going to find on the exam is SMTP doesn't really help you very much. SMTP is one of these situations where you really need to know what that does to be able to make that happen. And I think that's where you should also think about as you're going through this, where this happens. I think that's whenever I start trying to figure out how to go through this process and figuring out those details. That's where I would focus on this as well. I think as you're going through all of these things, which ones does this, how does this work? How does that technology do anything? What does that accomplish for me? What benefit does that technology provide me? In fact, most of the time, us professionals in the real world that are working on these things, we don't even sometimes remember what those words stand for. We just know SMTP. It almost becomes the name of the thing at that point. So don't worry so much about what those words stand for. Instead, try to associate the purpose of it, what it is doing, how that is working. Maybe that will help you as well. As you go through these, let's see how you did with this one. A lot of people have already answered this one. A system administrator has been asked to configure an SMTP configuration on a mobile device. Which of the following would be the reason for this configuration? And 69% of you, almost 70, say send email messages to a third party. 11% said communicate over an encrypted tunnel. 11% said centrally manage the mobile device. And single digits for scan incoming email or incoming mail for malicious software and send alerts to a management server. Those are your different options for these. Now, as you start looking at this list, we know that about 70% of you said to send email messages to a third party. Let's go through this question and figuring out these details. Why would that be the right answer for this one? Well, we start with the configuration that was asked, which was SMTP. So immediately we have to know what the SMTP is used for. Now, it helps if you know what the word is. So if you're someone who is into understanding the acronym, you know that SMTP is the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. But even that doesn't tell you enough. because based on the question that we had and the answers that were available, that could be used to scan incoming email for malicious software. It could be used to send email messages to a third party. It could even talk about communicating over an encrypted tunnel. We're just not sure. So there's different things here that we have to think about or worry about as we're looking at this. Just knowing the name of it, not good enough to have those things there. What we have to know is, here we go for this. Here's what we do with SMTP. Here's how this works for all of these things. SMTP allows us to send mail from a device to a mail server. SMTP is for outgoing mail for all of these things. Outgoing mail, pretty important to be able to have that most important piece of it. SMTP, not really for incoming mail for an end user. SMTP is also used to send mail between mail servers. So when you send mail out to a third party, it doesn't immediately go to the third party. It may hop through one or more mail servers along the way to finally get to the point where we're trying to work through these things. So whenever you see the term SMTP, always think about sending mail from an end user perspective. Don't worry so much about how SMTP works out in the cloud, how it works between mail servers, because for the purposes of the A+, we're really focused on people's devices and their computers. How does SMTP work there? Normally, when you're sending mail out via SMTP, you usually have to authenticate as well. So on a mobile device, you're not only saying, I need to be able to send mail, and this would be SMTP, but I also need to put in the right authentication. I need to put in the right username. I need to put in the right password to be able to send that mail. And that prevents somebody from going into all of this and just sending mail as you without any type of authentication. You want to stop the spammers before they start spamming. So that would be the way to make that happen. So SMTP is something you do have to know. For those of you wondering, SMTP uses TCP port 25. Usually we don't use that. It's one that often doesn't require authentication, or if it does, it's in the clear. Usually SMTP with authentication using TCP port 587. That's probably a more common one, but it doesn't have to use either. You should probably talk to your mail provider and say, what port number should I be using to send an SMTP message out from my mobile device? And they'll tell you. They usually have a web page that even documents all of that, so you will know exactly what you are sending. So SMTP is the thing that sends email messages to a third party. That's the best reason that you would be configuring SMTP on your mobile device, configuring SMTP on a laptop computer, on a desktop computer, in an email software. If you're configuring SMTP, that's so you can send email messages out. So if you do have a user that's able to receive messages, they see the message, they hit the reply button, they type a reply, they hit the send button, and they get an error, cannot send mail. Where's the problem? Probably with SMTP. So you can always break these things apart to figure out the details of it. SMTP is sending the mail. Receiving the mail is usually IMAP or POP3. So if you see IMAP or you see POP, then you are receiving email messages. So there's where you would separate those things out, which is especially important on the A+ exam. They want you to be able to configure these things on a mobile device. And on a mobile device, you have all these different options. You have SMTP, you have IMAP, you have all these different pieces. So hopefully that can help you as well as you're trying to figure out the details of this. In the chat room, is there an acronym for authenticated SMTP? Yeah, it's called SMTP. You would probably never be in a situation where you would be able to send SMTP without authenticating. And if you are able to send SMTP without authenticating, they have not configured your email properly. There should never be a case where you would be configured in a situation where that would really be an issue. So definitely don't do that. Don't be in a situation where you would worry about all of these pieces. Hopefully that can help you as well as you're trying to troubleshoot and work through these pieces. Let's do another one. Let's do another question. We've got time for some more. Here's the next question on our list, which asks, a network administrator needs to connect VLANs across multiple switches. Which of the following would be the best choice for this requirement? A network administrator needs to connect VLANs across multiple switches. Which of the following would be the best choice for this requirement? Would it be a managed switch? Would it be a router? Would it be a bridge? Would it be a firewall? Or would it be a repeater? Those are your 5 different options. A network administrator needs to connect VLANs across multiple switches. Which of the following would be the best choice for this requirement? Hopefully that's one that you can work through. Figure out all these details. Would it be managed switch? Would it be router? Would it be bridge? Would it be firewall? Or would it be repeater? Hopefully you'll be able to answer those and figure out the details of this. Have a look yourself. See if those are a pretty good option for you, being able to work through those. I think as I start breaking these down, you will also see on any of these questions that you really do have to know the nuances of these different technologies. This happens to be obviously networking questions, a network administrator. So these networking questions really do focus on understanding how the network operates and how all of these things. In fact, I saw someone give an answer about a networking component earlier today in an online forum, and it was completely wrong. In many ways, we're going with odd answers sometimes in some of these books. I highly recommend you find somebody who's a network administrator, who's someone who has done networking, who is a network professional, who is someone who's been doing this a very long time, and get the details of these things. That's one of the great things about sort of now doing these videos now, as someone who's been a systems engineer working with networks and in security. This is one of the things that I love to focus on, is the networking side. So if you ever have a question about any of those things, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to kind of break down how these things are used and how they are implemented in actual networks. It's one of the really interesting parts of what I used to do, is working through those pieces of it. Let's see how we do with this particular question. I want to be able to look through all of these and figure out the details. A network administrator needs to connect VLANs across multiple switches. Which of the following would be the best choice for this requirement? Well, we're a little torn on this one. Not quite the overwhelming majority. In fact, we don't have a majority on this one. But we do have a plurality. 47% of you say a managed switch. 28% of you say a router. And 20% of you say a bridge. 3% say a repeater. 2% say a firewall. So we can kind of throw those out from a perspective of this. The real key here is the process we're going through. We want to connect VLANs across multiple switches. Now, of course, we can configure VLANs on individual switches, but as soon as we put these together, we need to connect these switches so that these VLANs can talk to each other. So if we have a VLAN 7 on one switch and a VLAN 7 on another switch, we somehow need to connect these things together. One of the most common ways to do this is with a switch that can understand one of these more detailed technologies, specifically trunking. This VLAN support for trunking is 802.1q. So this is where you can really focus on understanding switching and where you would go to get all of that working properly. That's where you would go, is the 802.1q. You should immediately start thinking about VLANs, thinking about 802.1q. That's where you would go to make that happen. Trunking is one of the best ways to do it, but that's not the only thing that a managed switch will do. A managed switch can prioritize traffic. To be able to do that, managed switch will need to be able to have redundancy support, be able to do spanning tree protocol, be able to provide some type of management functionality with SMTP, and be able to do port mirroring. Now, in the chat room, some folks are saying, yeah, but you would need to route if you wanted to do inter-VLAN routing between the switches. You would need a router. Except the question here did not ask about a router. The question specifically said that a network administrator just needs to connect VLANs across multiple switches. Layer 3 is not required. You do not need to have anything on this to be able to do anything with layer 3. We're simply connecting VLANs. It's all layer 2 functionality. So layer 2 functionality with this trunking is 802.1q. Typically an unmanaged switch, a very simple switch, doesn't support VLAN trunking or 802.1q. You can use those terms interchangeably. You would need to be able to have a switch that understood that. So you would look through the switch configuration, look through the specifications for the switch. You go to Cisco's website, you look at a switch, and you look under the switch configuration, does it support 802.1q? That's really what they're going to put on their website. And they go, they may even say supports trunking with 802.1q. They may even put a little more detail in there, but if it just says 802.1q, you will know that it will be able to connect VLANs across multiple switches to be able to have that there. You would, if you did, in the point in the chat room, some folks said, what if you had a VLAN 5 that needed to talk to a VLAN 7? Well, whenever you have two VLANs that are in different virtual LANs, now you have to route. So you would need a router to be able to do that. Then in that case, you would absolutely need a router to do inter-VLAN communication is with a router. And some people say I need a layer 3 switch to do that. A layer 3 switch is a router. It's actually one box. In part of the box is a router. In part of the box is a switch. That's the only thing a layer 3 switch is. It's a router and a switch just in one box. There's nothing magic about, we're calling it layer 3 switch. We could just as easily call it a router switch combo. How about it's a layer 2 router? Maybe that's what it is. It's not. It's a marketing term, layer 3 switches. It's a router and a switch that you've crammed into one box so you don't have to buy two things. That's all it is. It doesn't do anything differently than a router. It doesn't do anything differently than a switch. It's just those two things together. So make sure you know the difference between a managed switch and an unmanaged switch. It's a big part of the exam objectives that you know these different networking components and have that there. We've got some other options here. We've already mentioned why this is not a router or a layer 3 device. Sometimes people will use the generic term. It's not a router. It's a layer 3 device. It's the same thing. Sometimes if you've got that layer 3 functionality in a switch, people will call that a layer 3 device. Very often firewalls are layer 3 devices because firewalls can also route traffic very commonly between those. But in this case, we just need to connect VLANs across multiple switches. A router is not needed. We also have bridges. A bridge you can think of as a very simple switch. It's what we used to call switches before there were switches. We had bridges. Bridges are, I guess one of the very common ways that bridges are described are being able to forward traffic based on a destination MAC address, very commonly done in software. So the real difference when switches came along is we took that forwarding process and we put it into ASICs. We put it into hardware. And so a bridge and a switch are really synonymous from a functional perspective. A switch forwards traffic based on a destination MAC address. A bridge forwards traffic based on a destination MAC address. Same thing. It's exactly the same device. In fact, it's very common to call a switch a bridging device, a layer 2 bridging device. So it's one of those you run into. So we would not really refer to a bridge, though, as being able to connect VLANs across multiple switches because those old style bridges really did not do 802.1q. They really did not do, even before 802.1q, there was a technology called ISL from Cisco. Those were technologies we created so that we could take multiple VLANs and span them across from one device to another. So this is one, the question in the chat room, is there a scenario where you want a bridge over a switch? There is not. These days, there are no bridges. We don't use bridges, the old style bridges anymore. You have a switch. So that's the way that you would work through this, is a bridge has really been replaced these days with a switch. If you do run into a bridge, you would be running into a device from the 80s, maybe the 90s. They are old school devices. They might have 2 or 4 ports on them, max. That's all we had. That's how we connected our networks together back in the day. Firewalls, although there are some firewalls that can connect VLANs across multiple switches at layer 2, that's not what we generally use a firewall for. That is not the best choice for this requirement. This is one of those questions where you could have multiple answers on this list, but only one is really the best. And in this case, the best one is a managed switch to be able to have that there. And a repeater is it's a layer 1 device. All it effectively does is extend one network and make it a little bit longer. So that's one of those situations where if you're going across a very long distance, a repeater is useful, but a repeater is not used to connect VLANs across multiple switches. That's not what we would use a repeater for. So definitely not. A bridge was commonly used to connect hubs or mouths to each other. Yeah, this was a device. The bridge was sort of the center of a network back in the day. These days, we have core switches. Back in the day, we had core bridges, and we connected 4 big networks together. How's that for port density? 4 devices to have those things there and have that capability. That's one of those that would be useful to know. Now we've got some time. There's some other questions that have come up. We can circle back to this question a bit. We can talk about bridges and switches and firewalls that route and firewalls that switch and firewalls that repeat. We can go through all of that. Maybe perhaps we'll circle back in the second hour to be able to have some of that. Let's do another question though. This one doesn't help for you folks that are on a podcast, but I do have one that can help you from a visual perspective. Here is the question that has this that says, what interface is this? So on the screen, I have a gold box around a couple of interfaces that are on the screen. It's asking, what interface is this? This is a fill in the blank question to be able to figure out this detail. So hopefully you'll be able to do that. Let's zoom up on this so you can see it a little bit better. What interface is that one right there? What is that interface? Remember, no answering in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We want to be able to figure this one out and figure out what that is in there. There's 2 of them there, isn't there? There's not just one, there's 2 listed. Figure out those details. Type in your answer. This is not a multiple choice answer. This is a answer that is a fill in the blank. So I'm not even giving you any hints on this one. You're not even going to be able to choose between these 2. Have a look. For those in the chat room, I will give you a hint. It is not a Sega controller port. Not a Sega controller port. Didn't those have pins? Maybe I'm thinking of the Nintendo. Sega controller ports, I could have sworn had the pins on them. Are there fill in the blank questions on the exam? There certainly could be. The performance-based questions do give you that option to say, yes, this could be a fill in the blank question. So make sure that you're familiar with these as you go through here. I think the questions that are fill in the blank make you think a little bit as well. It might help you too. Was it 9 pins in the Sega? I thought so. I thought it was one of those cases where whenever you start doing that and getting through the details of this, maybe you could figure out what those happen to be. If you think you know the answer, make sure you lock it in at professormesser.com/QA. That's where you want to go to lock in all of those. That's what I remember from the Sega anyway. So this is not, I can definitively tell you that this is not the Sega. That's the best I can do for you. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. That's what it is right there, professormesser.com/QA. Whenever I start going through these and figuring out, should I give you a picture? Should I make it multiple choice? Should we break it down in a different way? Hopefully, you'll be able to go through these. And you might even have this on your computer. You might even have this on a laptop. That might help you as you're going through this. So feel free to have a look and figure it out. If you've never, ever seen this interface, then you definitely want to figure out the details. That's one thing that I think I like to go through when I go through all of the exam objectives. Do I have a list of everything? Have you seen all of these? So I try to put every single interface that is in the exam object, not just C, but every single interface in the exam objectives. Make sure you go through this and have a look at them. Have these pieces of it. I think it might help you too. Let's see how you did with this one, what interface this is. If you ever see this on a computer, on a laptop, and being able to work through it, then you probably are looking at an eSATA interface. That is an external SATA interface. This is one where if you want to plug in an external storage device, it's one where we thought we'd really be using this a lot. We really thought we'd be using eSATA just a ton to be able to connect. And it's one of those situations where it's a perfectly viable standard. It's a standard based on the SATA that we're using inside of our computer, so not a huge jump technologically to simply put an interface on the outside. That would be easy to make that there. This is one, though, where eSATA just isn't being used very much. This is one where USB and Thunderbolt have effectively jumped in speeds so fast and so with such high throughput that we really generally have not seen eSATA catch on very much. So whenever you go with the eSATA, you see an eSATA interface on your computer, you're probably going to be connecting everything with some other way. In fact, I had to find a laptop that had older interfaces on it just to find one that had eSATA. Because you might find some of these. There are people if you're in a big organization, somebody's got a laptop like this. Because somebody in the chat room said, this seems old. Well, guess what? If it's on somebody's desk, it's new. It's modern. If somebody is still using this laptop, and I assure you someone is, this is a modern device. This is one of the things people sometimes think about on the exam, is you get to that perspective that you're thinking you would always just go learn the newest stuff. But that's not what the A+ exam is for. The A+ exam is to prepare you for walking into a brand new environment where there could be years of components and being able to work through it. And eSATA is a good example of this. In fact, in this same picture, we've got eSATA, we got some USB, we got HDMI. That's not bad. We got some 10100 network. There's a VGA. Probably aren't going to see very many of those, but sometimes you need that on a laptop. And some FireWire. So if you're cracked myself up there with the FireWire. So that's where we would get that eSATA from. You still are going to run into them. They're still going to be there. You're still going to see some of that. They are, and I have plenty of FireWire cables. If anybody needs them, they're right there. That might help you too. If you're someone who needs some FireWire cables, it's good to have those back there. You never know when that might work out for you. I think we just have some time. We got time for one more. We got a couple of minutes. I'm going to squeeze one more in because I think you need more cloud questions. This question asks, which of the following would best describe a cloud service that charges a flat fee for storage and does not include a per transaction cost? Which of the following would best describe a cloud service that charges a flat fee for storage and does not include a per transaction cost? Would it be rapid elasticity? Would it be internal? Would it be non-metered? Would it be on-demand self-service? Or would it be resource pooling? That's where you want to go with these. Hopefully that's one you're familiar with. You've been doing your cloud computing section. Maybe that's one that will help you as you go through this. Whenever I start looking at the details of this and figuring out what we should do next, this is where you want to focus on. If you think you know the answers, go to professormesser.com/QA, lock in your answer. Maybe something to help you as well as you're going through all of these. See if you can break down what all of these are. All 5 of these, by the way, are actual answers, actual content, actual things from the exam objectives. So you do need to know all 5 of these. All 5 of these are real things. So even if you think you know the answer, go through this and see if you can figure out the details of this. That might help you too as you're going through and saying, well, I know what that is. I don't know what that one is. Let me make a note. And maybe you need to go back to the cloud computing piece and really understand what the differences of that happen to be. That may be a great way to do it. Hopefully it can help you too as you're getting into the different views of this. This would help you. They're all in my videos. They're all in the exam objectives. That'd be a great place to go to learn all of those things. I think that might help you as well. Let's see how you did with this one. I'm going to click the How Do We Do button, and 68% of you say, oh, well, that's non-metered. You may be somebody who's used this before. That's non-metered. But 18% of you say, no, that's on-demand self-service. That's where we would focus on those pieces. We also have 7% that said resource pooling, 5% that said rapid elasticity, and 3% that say internal. Well, if you're somebody who is working on the cloud, you're storing something in the cloud, and it doesn't cost you any more to store more information. It's a flat fee for storage, and there's no cost to retrieve the file. There's no cost to put the file out there. Then you're probably using a non-metered service. Because if it was metered, there would probably a cost for everything you use. The more storage you use, the more you would pay. The more you stored, the more you would pay. The more you retrieved, the more you would pay. But there are some cloud services that give you a flat fee. You pay one flat fee, and you don't have to pay for putting, if you put one file or you put 100 files, it's the same price. If you upload one file or you upload 100 files, it's the same price. If you download one file or download 100 files, it's the same price. That's non-metered. If you're in an environment where you're trying to understand what your costs are going to be, you need to budget things properly, you may be paying a little bit more for a non-metered service, but at least you know exactly what the price is going to be every month. So that's one of the benefits of having non-metered services. I think that whenever I start going through the details of this, it seems like there's a minor difference between those. The real difference, though, is how you are planning to implement these applications, how you're planning to use the cloud, how you're planning to budget for the cloud, which very often is the most important thing. Can we pay for this? How much are we going to pay for this? My cloud services, if you go to professormesser.com, is a metered service. The more people visit my site, the more I have to pay. The more files I put on my site, the more I have to pay. It's just one of those situations where that was the right service for me. And I figure if I'm getting to a point where I have to pay more, that's a good kind of problem, right? More people are visiting my site. There are non-metered. If you're using a web hosting service that's a flat fee, you can put as many files as you would like out there, have as many pages on your website right there, and you're paying the same price every month. That's a non-metered service. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, of course, but in this case, non-metered service is what we were looking for. 68% of you chose C, non-metered service. That is the right service that you would want to use in this case, where you are charging a flat fee and you do not have a per transaction cost. So that might help you as well. I mentioned earlier that every single one of these questions came from the exam objectives. If you do not have the exam objectives, then you want to be sure that you get those downloaded immediately. Make sure. Get the objectives, use them as a checklist. They are extensive. And I've had people tell me, well, I didn't go download them because I just thought they were some overview of the exam. But that's not actually true. They are an extensive overview. They give you everything you need to know. In fact, they're more than an overview. They're really detailed. Let me grab the 1001 exam objectives just so you can see a perspective of this. I'm going to grab my version of it just so you can see what this is. Here are the 220 1001 exam objectives. And here's section 1, section 2, section 3. Everything that's in here that's green is on the previous version of the exam. Other colors are new topics. This is what I used whenever I was creating the videos. If you wanted a version of this, you wanted to see this, I highlighted all the new topics on that website. So if you go to professormesser.com/objectives, you'll be able to see that. But boy, look at all this. Look at all the details that are on here. So don't discount this. Everything you need to know for the exams in that list. Why wouldn't you use this? Extensive to have that information available. Don't miss out. Don't lose that one. That's a good one to know about. We do one of these study groups every month for the 1001. This month was today, January the 7th, but we have another one planned for next month in February. It's Tuesday, February the 4th is our next 1001. We also have on January 9th is our 1002 study group. On February the 4th, February the 6th of next month are the next A+. You can also join us Wednesday of next month and Wednesday of next week and the Wednesday after that for the Network Plus and Security Plus. If you're ever wondering when the next event is going to be, we have so many live events that go on. The best thing I can offer is go to professormesser.com/calendar. That's a great place to go to find out when the next live event is going to be. It may be helpful for you too. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A. Can you believe it? To go through there and see the details of this. By the way, Since some of you were asking about CEUs earlier, I didn't give you a CEU code. So let's back up real quick. I'm going to give you one right now. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, you can go to the top or the bottom. Make sure you follow this procedure, by the way, because if you don't follow this procedure, you won't get the CEU. And I want to give you this CEU for watching this. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Click that Contact Us link. It brings up a form. Put in your name, your email address. Make sure those are right, because I will be sending this back to you from an email. There is also a subject line. Please put this is the January 2020 A+ 220-1001 or Core 1 A+ study group. And then put the super secret code word of the month in the body of the message. The super secret code word is non-metered. Non-metered super secret code word of the month. Put that in there so I can see it very easily. And then, of course, you can put anything else you'd like in there. These are all coming to me. So you're more than welcome to send that to me, and I'll be able to send you a 1-hour CEU digitally signed by me that says you must have watched this because you knew the process and you knew what the super secret code word was. Stick around for the next hour. I'm going to open up the phone lines. You're going to be able to send me questions and messages, so I'll be able also open up the phone lines. You can call in if you would like. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, on YouTube. I mentioned also on Instagram. So if you're someone who is an Instagrammer, all of my daily pop quiz questions are out on professormesser.com/Instagram. We've also got the course notes. Don't forget about those at professormesser.com/1000 notes, 1000 notes. And of course, make sure if you're buying on Amazon that you visit our website, professormesser.com/Amazon, to make that happen. Thanks for joining us in this first hour. Stick around for the second hour. We're going to turn this boat around and have you ask me questions, anything you would like. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Well, we've got plenty of questions that have been coming in. Here we go. Hi, everybody. Do the CEUs expire? They do not. They do not expire. So you can, if you're watching this on a replay, you can send me on a replay. Easy, easy, easy. So let's see if I can get this going on my screen. I've got to call into my own show, and then I will give you the phone number. You can also ask questions in the chat room. Sometimes nobody calls in. That's fine too. We have all of our questions coming in the chat room. But if you're old like me and you like to talk to somebody over a telephone, that's the process we can use. We've got, let me host a show. I'll be with you in just a moment. While I get things going on my side, I need to call into my own show, and then I will give you, don't worry, I'll give you the phone number. It's all happening, but I have to call in first so that you have a phone number that you can actually call into. Let's click a button. We'll have it call in. I'll sign into my own show, and I have to type a thing on my side and hit a pound sign.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Well, that sounds redundant. And then I'll put in my 6-digit PIN number.
Welcome.
There we go. So if you would like to join us, you can either ask a question in the chat room. You go to professormesser.com/live, or if you're watching this on YouTube, it's the same chat room there as well. You can also call in anywhere in the continental U.S. You can call in 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies, 855-785-7545. You can call in from anywhere in the world for free. If you're using Skype, you can use Skype. Put a +1 at the beginning of that. It doesn't cost you any Skype minutes. You put a +1, 855-785-7545, and you can call in. That's the number on the screen. Simply call that number that is right there, and you will be able to call in as well. Some folks in the chat room are asking about CertMaster CE. Somebody who's working on their certification, trying to get their certification renewed, and asked if I would talk about that. What I would recommend is you go to the YouTube, and on the YouTube, you type in CompTIA renewal. I have to type it myself in just a few hours. That's what you're looking for, because I've created a video on the YouTube. Let's see if I can click it. There we go. Where how to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus in just a few hours after you finish watching the ad for whatever comes up. There it is. So that's what you want to look for, where I step through all of the different ways that you can renew a certification, or at least the 4 or 5 most popular ways for renewing a certification. And then I finish with showing you CertMaster CE, which is a way that you can renew any of these certifications, A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus, in just a few hours. So no collecting CEUs, no going through a process of taking another certification exam or any of that. That's what you would do. How to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus in just a few hours. That might help you too as you're going through all of this. That might help. So I've got plenty of details, 6 minutes, 50 seconds long. I really do go through everything, and I try to give you the advantages and disadvantages of both of those, so you know, of each one of those. So you know, should I do this process? Should I do that process? Should I do another? Well, I try to give you advantages and disadvantages so you will know which one of those is useful. Let's go to the phone lines. We'll start with the 412 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Professor Messer. I'm Paul calling from Pittsburgh. How are you?
Hi, Paul. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you, sir?
Well, I just, first of all, want to thank you for the content that you have produced. I have been watching you for probably over a year now, since the 900 series, and I have thoroughly enjoyed watching your program, and I've learned a lot. I am currently thinking about getting into the 1000 series and taking the exam pretty soon.
Great.
And my dilemma is this. I am a early 50s person who is really thinking about a career change, kind of burned out at my current job and just wanting to branch into something that I've enjoyed. And I just wondered any advice that you might have for someone at my age trying to get into IT at this time.
Well, it would be our age, Paul, wouldn't it?
Okay.
You want to break it down that way. So I can give you a perspective of someone who's kind of gone through a few of these things, and not really a change in the career, but a change from job to job to job. And as you probably can expect, in this particular industry, even really in many industries, ageism becomes a little bit of a challenge. One of the things I often tell people when they want to get into IT, if they've been doing something else, is if possible, try to leverage the thing you were previously doing. So for instance, if you were a nurse and you wanted to get into IT, I say, well, hospitals have fantastic IT departments. That's where you should maybe focus first. If somebody's doing or into transportation, there's plenty of transportation companies that need IT. Every company has IT. So the first thing I always tell people is figure out the best way to take the knowledge you have now and be able to use that in a way that would be in an existing IT company. If you work in retail, trust me, retail companies have extensive IT departments. So there are ways that you may be able to leverage that. I realize that's not always something you can do, but that also helps in many cases avoid some of the ageism issues that you would run into, where people may not want to hire somebody who's 50, 52 years old because they got people younger that they know are going to stick around for longer. The other thing I would say to be able to negate that is when you get to a certain age in any industry, you've already built a pretty good foundation of people you know. So at this point in your career, you should have at least a pretty good LinkedIn list. You should have a great list of people on LinkedIn that you have worked with or that you are familiar with in the industry. And if you haven't, this may be a good time to start that list in LinkedIn. This LinkedIn is a great way professionally to keep track of where people are and what they're doing, but it's also a great way to reach out to people and say, hey, I'm looking for a change. I know that you work in this company. Do you know anybody in the IT department I should work with? That's why I often tell people, and this is probably the best example of this, is in my IT career, I had about 15 different jobs. Some of those jobs I went from company to company. Many of those jobs were within the same company. But in IT, we tend to jump around a bit. That's one of the best ways to improve your salary is to move to a different company. And usually we do this every 2 to 3 years. It happens a lot. It's very common in IT for that to happen. It's more unusual for somebody to stay at an organization much longer than that. But whenever I was moving from company to company, one of the things I found is if I knew somebody who already worked there, it helped a lot during the interview process. And this may not even be somebody who worked in IT that I knew who worked there. When I went in for the interview, I would say, I know this person who works in accounting. They go, oh, you know that person? That's great. So already there's a known connection where, okay, I can trust you a little better. I can even go to that person and ask them about you. Are you the kind of person who's going to come into work? Are you going to be late? Are you going to miss days? Is somebody we should hire or not? And having somebody within the organization give you that thumbs up is a very, very powerful thing. So this may be the part of your career that you've really been collecting this LinkedIn and wondering, what am I ever going to do with this LinkedIn account? You may have finally found the reason to use this LinkedIn account to be able to reach out to people and say, I'm really interested in getting into IT. Who would you recommend I talk to in your organization? That could be very, very powerful. So I always tell people, find the thing that makes you excited to come to work. Find the thing that you really like to do, and then it's going to be easy to make that happen. But when you get to a certain age and a certain set of responsibilities, there's also financial responsibilities that we have. So it's a balancing act, isn't it? We have to figure out, how do I make this move without bankrupting my family and making them starve and having them run around with no clothes on their back? That's the real challenge. So I get it, but there are things you can do to make the process a little easier.
All right. Thank you so much. I got one more quick question. My nemesis is networking, and I've been trying to get over. I've gotten to the point where I'm beginning to become more familiar with port numbers, but there's so many other aspects of networking that just stump me, and I just wondered, any tips as far as study tricks to really get that networking thing stick, because that's my biggest issue.
Well, I finished my career, the last 7 years of my career, when I worked for a different company. When I wasn't running my own company and working for myself, I worked for a next generation firewall company as a systems engineer. We had to know networking cold. And one of the things I found about networking, and one of the things that is just really plainly obvious when you get into it, you will never know everything there is to know about networking. There's no possible way that one person can know everything they would ever need to know about networking. It's impossible. There's just way too much. So when you look at networking as a whole, you're first starting, I can only imagine the overwhelming feeling of saying, how in the world am I supposed to know all of this? Well, the answer is you're not. There's no possible way. Even when I was working at what I would really consider to be the pinnacle of my career from a technical perspective, working as a senior systems engineer at a next generation firewall company at a industry startup in Silicon Valley. That is the sort of the highest level technical job I could have ever hoped for in my career. One of the things we found was that in our handful of engineers as we were getting started, now, of course, the company's thousands and thousands of people, but at the time there were 5 SEs that in the entire world that were handling this product, but we all had different strengths. And I knew that if I had a BGP question, I would call that particular person. They knew BGP cold. If somebody had a question about protocols, they would talk to me. If somebody had a question about management, we would talk to that person. If somebody had a question about reporting, we'd call this other guy. So we had this group, this core group of people, and we just relied on each other and our built-in knowledge and what we did or didn't know. And I think that was the important part, is what you don't know. Now, obviously, there will be things that you really do have to know. You have to understand how switching works. You have to know how routing works. And one of the things I recommend people doing is getting a copy of Wireshark, running some traffic across my network, and watching that happen. And that's kind of how I got started in networking, was really with the sniffer and being able to look at protocols and begin to understand the language of applications and the language of networking. And at that point, it's almost like learning a second language and trying to understand more about it. As soon as I started understanding, oh, that's the way Windows communicates. That's how Windows transfers a file. That's the way Linux transfers a file. And once you figure out those details, it becomes a whole lot easier to be able to make all of those things happen together. So the real key to understand networking is to start getting your hands dirty. I would also recommend, because we didn't have this back in my day, but now we do, is to get a copy of Packet Tracer. That is Cisco's product that allows you to create a virtual network using Cisco switches, Cisco routers. It is a simulation of a network, but it feels like an emulator. It feels like it's an actual Cisco box. You can go to the command line. You can type things in. If you ever wanted to get into it and get into it strong and break things and fix things, Packet Tracer is a great way to do it.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thanks again for all the work that you do and all of us out here that you're helping. We truly appreciate it. And I don't know what we would have done if we didn't have folks like you creating great content and sharing it with the rest of us. So thanks again, and all the very best to you. And Happy New Year.
Thank you, Paul. Best of luck to you, and Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks. That's very nice of you to say. That's one of the things that I think helps everybody is we all sort of combine our thoughts, ideas, and suggestions together. So I kind of feel that this is how it works. That's the only way to make it happen, is if we all can work together and make that work. Let's go back to phone line, 661 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
California, and my name is Tino.
Hey, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, as an enthusiast who's been building computers since he was like 15, I also wanted to make a career change at 30. So I decided to look into the A+ certification, and man, was I taken back with how much information is in this packet that you have. I bought your course notes. I thought they were amazing. Yeah, they work really well with the objectives. I mean, you just have them side by side as you're watching your videos. It's awesome. So thank you very much for that. But my question would be this. This is a lot of information. What is the best, what would your best suggestion be for someone to study? Because I've been reading your book. I even bought your book. And it's just like, I know what a CPU is. I know how it works. I've been doing this for years. I built a computer just 2 weeks ago for somebody, installed OS. And it's just like, what can I do to keep myself engaged? Because I'm like, I know what these things, but then once I get into porting, it's just like, what? What would you suggest for someone like me?
I say there's four things. Now, you're kind of seeing what I saw when I first took the A+ certification. I've been in the industry a long time. I was Compact certified. I was certified with another 3 or 4 different manufacturers, because before there was the A+, you had to go to the manufacturer and get certified in their product. And it just became complicated to do that across all of these different computer manufacturers, which were blowing up at the time. But I thought, let me just take the A+. I've been working on this equipment forever. I've been putting together Novell servers. I've been installing network interface cards. I've been replacing hard drives. I've been upgrading memory. I got this cold. And then I started reading the content for the A+ certification, thinking, how did I even do any of that? How did I know to do any of this? I must be an idiot. Is it pure luck? Because I have no idea these technologies. I'd sort of skipped over how memory works. I just installed the memory and we were gone. That's one of those situations where you start to realize what you don't know. But it was great to be able to finally learn that. Go, oh, that's why when I was reading these other things, that's why I put the memory in this particular format and the way that it worked, and all of these things started coming together. So that's one of the benefits. I usually tell people there's 4 things that can really help you get this information solid when you're studying for the certification. One, of course, is to watch the videos. That's a little self-serving, but that's I think, whether it's my videos or anyone else's, I think seeing someone do it is a great way to learn. It's certainly a valuable way to learn. The other one is a book, and find the book that works for you. I usually tell people to go to Amazon, read the first chapter or so of these books, because you can look inside the book on Amazon and find one that kind of works for you, that has your feel, that has the same voice that matches how you would like to learn. Makes sense for me. The third is to get as much hands-on as possible. Usually just as important for the Core 1 as the Core 2. On the Core 1, you're sort of inside the computer itself, removing cards, removing the power supply, plugging things into the motherboard. And of course, on the Core 2, your hands-on are more of the keyboard and the mouse, and running the operating system and running the utilities and understanding the difference between Event Viewer and Performance Manager, and be able to really see the differences in all of those. And the last thing is to get plenty of Q&A. So once you've done those first three, it's nice to see if you locked it in by going through as many sample tests or sample questions as you can to see if you really did capture and understand what you were learning through the first three of those different resources. That's what I would recommend, is to really focus on those four things. And I think that's a good combo to figure out those pieces. Combine those four with the exam objectives, and I think you're in good shape.
Cool. Again, thank you very much for answering my question and taking the time. I know that you do a lot of this stuff for us, and we're all very grateful. So thank you again.
I appreciate you calling. Happy to do it. That's one of those things that we really couldn't do any of this. I'm really fortunate to be able to do this. When I started doing this, we didn't have live streaming. We didn't have recording digitally. We recorded to tape. So now we can do this. So why wouldn't we? It's a lot more fun to do it this way, too. Let's go to 908 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller.
Hey, what's going on, Professor Messer? My name's Brian. I'm calling from Roselle, New Jersey.
Hey, Brian. What can we do for you?
I had a question, and feel free to correct me if, the whole way I'm thinking about this is wrong. So USB, SATA, Thunderbolt, all of these, different data transfer protocols we use.
Yeah.
I feel like all they are getting as close as we can get to the PCIe bus, because that's where data is transferred, as close to the processor as it can be. And if I'm kind of right about that idea, I was then thinking, why don't we just go right to the PCIe bus then?
Yeah, you're not wrong. The closer we can get directly to PCI Express seems to be where the industry has decided how we're going to transfer data in and out of memory, and of course, how memory will get information in and out of the CPU. And we're kind of hitting limits as how that's going to work on our motherboards. We're trying to increase the speeds of those, but you're not wrong. You're starting to see aspects of this with the latest SSD. Instead of having SATA, we're even getting rid of SATA connections and going straight to M.2, because the M.2 plugs directly in to the PCI Express bus. So now we no longer have SATA as our slowdown. We don't have to worry about increasing the speed of SATA. Let's just plug right into PCI Express. And that's why you'll also notice when people are trying to increase speeds in these servers, they're plugging into the interfaces on the motherboard that are PCI Express to make that happen. That's why our video plugs into PCI Express. That's why M2 plugs into PCI Express. That's why we try to get everything, because that tends to be the best bus on the motherboard that gives us the highest speed at what could be considered the lowest cost. And that's the real balancing act, by the way, that all of these different interfaces are trying to work through, is how do we get the fastest speed possible while keeping the cost of this down. When you talk about things like Thunderbolt, there is a chip for Thunderbolt that sits between the Thunderbolt interface and the rest of the computer. Well, there's latency that happens there. There's an extra chip that has to get paid for. There's probably a licensing fee that has to be paid. There's additional cost for doing that. So if we can minimize the cost and just plug directly into the bus itself, that would be ideal. Now, there's cases where that makes the thing you're plugging into have to be more complicated, though. There's your balancing act. Now that if you don't have anything sitting in the middle, that chip in the middle, that becomes the arbitrator, then the device you're plugging in has to be smart enough to plug directly into PCI Express, and that's going to increase the cost of the product.
Right.
So there's the balancing act. That's why we still see USB-C, and we thought, well, USB-C is fast enough, and it keeps the products less expensive, and it's kind of a common interface across. That's the one we'll use. We'll use that for pretty much everything. And then if you get to a point where you just need higher speeds, higher throughput, you have a video card, you're going to have to plug into PCI Express directly and pay the extra cost.
I get it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I didn't think about if I don't need that much speed, why complicate something that does make it more expensive? Last question, just to let you go, and thanks, like everyone else said. The study notes, I can buy them in a physical book, and I think I was listening to your your stream earlier in the study group, and you said that if we buy the physical copy, that we would get the digital copy as well, included free. Is that how that works?
That's how that works. That way, I will ship this to you, but while you're waiting on the shipment, you'll get the digital version to go along with it.
Yeah, no, that's great to have both, for whatever situation I'm in. All right, man. Hey, thanks a lot, Professor Messer. I really appreciate the time, man.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, bye.
That's another thing I made. I didn't actually think I would make a physical version of this. I didn't have a way to make a physical version of the course notes. In fact, I first published them in digital format. I'm a digital person. I thought, who's going to want a book? And then I showed Mrs. Professor Messer, hey, look at these course notes I made. And she said, well, when can I touch them? When can I put them in a book? When can I see them actually appear in a book? And I said, well, never. Why would you want a book of that? And she said, because I like a book. People like to hold a book and read a book. And I thought, well, how can we make that happen? So that's when I started calling around and talking to people and trying to figure out a way to make this happen. And finally found a great company to work with that makes these on demand. So when you order it, they make it for you. They're building it out. They're creating it on demand. I don't keep an inventory of these things. And then they ship it directly to you. So it comes right off the printer, goes directly to you, and you get your hands on the physical device. And I get to track it along the way, and I get to work with them. And it's been great because now you have the option for a physical book, but now you've got a plan. Now you can decide which one you want. And then if you get the physical, you get the physical and the digital. It doesn't matter. You're covered both ways. Let's go to the 972 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Hi, caller, 972.
Hi, I'm Alex, and I'm from Texas.
Hey, Alex. What can we do for you?
Oh, sorry. I got to mute the stream. You're like right next to my laptop, so it's really weird.
Yes, it is.
I had a question concerning as far as I'm real young. I'm 20. Worked a retail store for about 2.5 years. Basically, I've been doing this all my life. I love this stuff. And right now, I'm obviously currently studying for not for your, but the A+ certification. And my biggest problem that I'm running into is, at least in my area, all of the jobs, even like the entry-level IT position jobs, they all require either a degree plus experience plus everything else that you want from, I guess, a unicorn. So just what advice do you have for us into breaking into the IT field? Do we just, be a little gutsy and still apply for the job anyways? Or what are we really supposed to do?
This is something that's kind of a common thing. And sometimes I think that some of these job descriptions are pretty accurate. They're written from the perspective of a company that really would like someone to work for them that has these particular requirements. But sometimes I read through some of these job postings, and I think there's no way they're really expecting someone to provide them with a resume that has all of the things on there that they listed. So my common response when I see these is that if somebody is asking for an entry-level help desk position, regardless of what they say the requirements are, I send them a resume. I apply for that particular position because I think that they may not understand what they're asking for. And sometimes that happens with big companies is they call HR and say, hey, we need entry-level help desk. I need 2 people. Thanks. And then HR, they don't know. They write up a job description. We need someone with some type of nuclear physicist experience, and they need to be able to cook. And so they put that out on the website, and nobody has that experience for that particular job. So I just send my resume in. Now, the part that I always tell people is that it's more than just sending in resumes. There needs to be a strategy to this. There needs to be something more to what you are doing. And I mentioned this earlier, knowing people at these organizations can really, really help. So if you are not already in the local tech community, you need to get into the local tech community. And one of the best ways and one of the easiest ways to do this is to go to the local Microsoft user group meetings, go to the Cisco user group meetings, Go to any of the local user group meetings on technology, whatever they are. Go to meetup.com, find out when some of these folks are meeting. Just Google Microsoft user group in your particular geographical area, and get your LinkedIn ready to go. Start using your LinkedIn as a way to network with all of these people. And I mean people network with all of these people. The one thing I didn't mention, and this really helps when you go to these user group meetings, you're meeting these people who already have these jobs. They already work in these organizations, and you can ask them, oh yeah, I saw a job posting for help desk person. They were looking for somebody who understood Swahili. Is that something I really need to know? And they go, no, I have no idea why they put that in there. I think you could probably just send a resume. In fact, you should send me your resume and I will send it to HR. This is what happens very often. These big companies have finder's fees because usually they're going to a recruiter that's outside the company. And if the recruiter brings them somebody that they hire, they have to pay the recruiter big bucks for that, usually a percentage of that person's annual salary. But if they can hire somebody from within or somebody that somebody in their company already knows, they save a lot of money. And what they usually do is give a few $100 to the person who brought that person in. And the person, of course, who's brought in gets a job. So it's a win-win. There, you effectively get a finder's fee if you work for the company. So it's not unusual. There was somebody I worked with who was very good at this. He would just tell people, send me your resume, send me your resume, send me your resume. Because if he was the first one to get the resume into HR, he got credit for that hire. So they will often ask you at these user group meetings, oh, let me get on your LinkedIn. Let me get your resume. I'll send your resume in. And then you also, when you go to that interview, say, yeah, I know this person in your IT department who I met at we're in the same Microsoft user group. And now you've got that personal connection. So there's a few things you can do to help improve your chances. One of them is to ignore the requirements that are listed there. As I mentioned, some of these requirements are spot on, sometimes they're not. And the other one is to get to know the people that already work there. It's a multi-hone strategy, and you need to think about how you're able to get involved with these different organizations. It's a great way to also meet the people in your area, and you might actually learn something by going to user group meetings too.
Okay, well, I believe that's all the questions I had. One more question, actually.
Sure.
I just thought about it.
Yeah.
Do you have any practice test material that you recommend, or would you ever consider making one for us or anything like that? That we could buy?
Oh, your question's timely. I am just finishing up my 220-1001 practice exam book. For those of you that have followed me for Security Plus, I already have a practice exam book for that one. It was so popular, people said, you need one for 1001, you need one for 1002, you need one for Network Plus. So I'm busy writing it right now. I'm finishing up the 1001, and then we'll shift gears to 1002, but I hope to have both of those out in the upcoming months.
Okay, well, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think you're a big inspiration to us all, and I think we really appreciate what you do for us. It's been a long time coming to find materials that's as good as yours. So, yeah, just thank you, and I hope you had a good New Year.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. Have a great New Year as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And quite honestly, you guys are the ones doing the hard part. I make the videos and I host the live streams. This is really, you have to do the exam part. And these really are tough tests. They're content that you may not expect to see. Suddenly, now you have to learn. So hopefully it can make some of those. When is the Security Plus study group? If you go to professormesser.com/calendar, you'll see when all of the next events are going to be, including Network Plus, Security Plus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's go back to the phone line, 773. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello.
How are you, Professor Mensa? Good morning.
Good morning. What can we do for you?
Yeah, my name is Joseph. I'm so happy to be on this forum because a lady introduced me to go to Professor Mensa because I was trying to go into IT a long time ago. I'm from Nigeria, and but now I'm in the U.S. I live in Chicago.
Great.
So I've been trying to. IT is my passion, and I've been trying to go into IT a long time ago, over 10, 11 years ago. But due to financial issues, I was opting in and out. I couldn't do it. But right now, I'm based in the U.S. and I want to start IT proper in the year 2020. And a lady introduced me to your group that should go through your study group. That is the best. Now I watched your live streaming, and I really appreciate everything. And I just want to ask you for advice. How do I start a career in IT? Now I want to focus on my main goal is to be a network engineer. And from all what you said from your lessons today, I really understood them, because I've been into IT, and but now I just want to go into it fully. And I just want to ask you for an advice. What is your advice for me as a new, or what is your advice for new IT comers or people that want to go into IT for the first time? What is your advice? What books should they lay their hands on? And what is just your general advice?
There's a few things you can focus on. If somebody is trying to get into IT for the very first time, they have either limited experience or no formal jobs that they've had in IT. There's a few different things you can do. Some of this we've mentioned earlier, and I'll touch on again. But I think this is why I created the A+ training series. Back when I created the very first A+ was the 600 series A+ videos. This was over 10 years ago. And I created them because I would have family members that their computer would break. They would take their computer to the shop, to big name stores to be fixed. They would get their computer back and it wouldn't be fixed. And they would say, well, we have the internet. How hard could it be for these people to find how to fix the problem? And so I started researching the internet and found, well, actually it is kind of hard, because there wasn't a lot of good training content on the internet at that time. And I thought, we need some good training content. One of the things I also thought would be good is if people had a way to not just learn about the computers, but learn something they could use to get a job or get a better job. And I think the one overwhelming certification that does that is the A+ certification. That's why I chose that one as the very first certification that I did. So if you're somebody who's just starting in IT, I think the A+ certification is a very good place to start. So that's one thing you can do, is to earn that particular certification. I often tell people, if they're trying to get a job, they really need 4 things. They need a formal education. So if you already have an IT career certification, or you have a 2 or 4 year degree, an AA degree, or a bachelor's degree, it doesn't even have to be in technology. That's a very good formal education to have. I also tell people that it would be great if you had a way to earn an industry certification. So that's where IT, I think, is, or A+ is a great one to start with IT. Another thing that I tell people to do is to get some practical experience. Sometimes that's difficult if you've never had a job before, but there may be a church, there may be a nonprofit organization that needs somebody to maintain their systems, to make sure that their antivirus is up to date, to make sure that their operating systems are updated to the latest version. That's something you could do for free. You could volunteer. That counts as practical experience. And the last thing is the thing we've already mentioned, is it helps if you start attending Microsoft user group meetings, Cisco user group meetings, VMware user group meetings, these user group meetings where you're meeting the people. That's another great place to go to be able. Those are the 4 things, which are formal education, industry certification, practical experience, and knowing people that are already out there doing these jobs. Get some combination of those. You don't necessarily have to have all 4 of those, but you should be working so that you're filling in any gaps that you might have. And if you can get all 4 of those going, I think that would be a good entry point into IT.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Mensah. I really appreciate everything you said. And I want to get your books. Like, I think your book should be a good way to start for me. Like the notebooks and the ones you sell on Amazon, because I want to get a book on A+ while I listen to your videos online. I want to read the books, and then when time for your videos online, I will be able to participate so that I can understand better. So which of the books do you recommend? Is it the 1,000 notes or the Amazon book, or which one?
There's a number that this is sort of a question that's very subjective, because some people like one book, other people like another. And so one of the things that I've done is put a smattering of books on my website that I think people have generally given some positive reviews on. So if you go to the Professor Messer website, on the front page and from the A+ pull-down menu, I have some recommended resources, and that page will be able to give you a good example of the books and those four things I just mentioned. I'm going to click on my A+ study recommendations on my site so that I could show people that are watching this. Make sure I've got this up. Here's the A+ study resources on my site. So I mentioned my videos, of course, with my course notes. I give a example of some good books that would be a good option. Q&A. I mentioned you need to have plenty of Q&A. There's the Q&A. And then plenty of hands-on. Here's some lab books and lab manuals that could help you. So you pick one from each of those categories, and I think you're going to be in pretty good shape.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Mensah. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your effort and everything you've been doing so far. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Joseph. Best of luck. That's a great question, too, because it's a very common question that comes up a lot, which is, where do I start? Where do I go? How do I get this machine going? How do I get this big rock being pushed up a hill? How does it start moving? And the answer is a little bit at a time. And a little bit of time, and suddenly you realize you're halfway up the hill. It's one of those types of situations. Back to the phones. The 502 area code. Hey, caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
And how are you?
Hey, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
All right. Well, tomorrow is actually the day I'm going to be taking my 1001.
Okay.
And I was just, yes, I've been prepping like a madman watching your stuff. And, you know, I was in the Q&A today, and I've just been prepping my buns off trying to get this darn test mastered.
Right.
And, you know, I am doing everything I can to, you know, get as much experience as I can. And I actually went and did the test out cert in school. And, you know, I've been prepping for this for months, and I just wanted, you know, to know if you had any last minute advice or anything that, you know, you could tell me before I go in tomorrow and, you know, take this thing. Because I do plan to take both. And, you know, I want to take the software one and the hardware one, and I'm doing the hardware one tomorrow. I wanted to know, you know, because I'm not a hardware guy in reality. I'm just, you know, one of the guys who prefers, you know, software. I wanted to know if you had anything you can tell me to sort of help me out before I go in and do this thing.
Now, you say you're taking both of them at the same time, or you're taking just one of them tomorrow?
No. I'm only doing the 101 tomorrow and then the 102 later.
Okay, good. In fact, that's my first recommendation to people, because some people will say, oh, I need to take both of them on the same day. That seems like a lot. And I tell people, please don't do that. Please don't take both exams on the same day. Really focus on one exam first, and then focus on the other exam.
Right, exactly. I would tell that to somebody else doing it too, because, you know, I've been in trying to get a career in this for since 2007, 2008, and I'm finally getting on the right roadmap because, you know, I'm still actually getting my GED in that, and, you know, they purposely over here made the tests a heck of a lot harder. I was like, I'm going to put that aside and focus on my A+ first, because, you know, that's a good way to get my foot in the door. And, you know, I'm not a novice to computers. I mean, my friend Jamie has come by and showed me how to build a computer before. And, you know, I've got like 9 computers in my house, all of them running something different. And, you know, I mean, I've had Linux experience and Mac experience, Windows, etc. So, I'm not a novice with computers, so, I figured I'd just call in today and sort of, see what else you can tell me other than, taking the tests at separate times to sort of like, if there's anything I should know.
The final week of study is the one where it's the big tip I give everybody, which is this is the time you grab the exam objectives, and that becomes your final checklist. This is where you've got a day left, but you could still make this happen in a day. I think it's a good exercise to go through when you're in that final run. You're trying to determine, am I really ready to take this exam? That's your exam objectives. That's why you've downloaded that list, and you should be able to go through every topic on that list and determine, can I explain that topic to someone else? So, for example, I'm going to grab the 1001 exam objectives. I'm going to, let's just step through the first one of them is mobile devices. Given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components. And the first one is hardware/device replacement, keyboard, hard drive, SSD versus hybrid versus magnetic disk, and 1.8 inch versus 2.5 inch. So there's your first section, keyboard, hard drive. Can you explain to someone the differences in a keyboard between a desktop and a laptop? Can you explain the differences between an SSD, a hybrid, and a magnetic disk? Can you tell me the difference or why a 1.8 inch hard drive exists versus a 2.5 inch? If you go through this list, you start checking off, yep, I know that. Yep, I know that. Yep, I know that. Oh, let me circle that one. I'll come back to it. Now you've got a final checklist of things that you can use to help in that final push, that final week or final days before you take an exam. And you can really focus on the parts that may not be as strong as others. And you'll know at least where you can maybe gain a couple of extra points on the exam because you spent time on those particular topics.
Cool. Well, I'll definitely look over those objectives. I actually got them off my professor from school, and he sent me both of them in PDF form. And I will look over those today and also, do some last-minute prep with your videos and et cetera. So, I also have a Cisco networking course that I'm going through for the A+, and it's showing me some things. And I'll do as much as that as I can before tomorrow, so that way I'm really ready, to go in there at 9 o'clock and, get this thing as best as I can.
You got the right strategy in my mind. Best of luck.
All right. Thank you, sir.
That's really the great place to go, is to get everything lined up. You sort of queue up all the resources you have, and now you start taking advantage of all this work that you've done prior to that point. Let's go to 203. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, hi, Professor Masha. How are you?
Good. Thanks for calling.
All right. My question is, well, necessarily not a question. I was listening to it the other year, so I got to take that out so it doesn't mess me up.
Right.
I have actually just recently started watching you regarding the A+ certification. I had a formal education, an associate degree on information technology, but I was only dealing with web only. So I was doing some Java programming, some JavaScript, and I've been procrastinating for a while, taking the A+ certification. And I know the things to do about computer, but really didn't put my foot down and getting started. And I just look over with the old materials that I have. I'm like, I'm outdated. And right now I work as a database coordinator, but I really want to get this certification going on. So I just started joining your group, and I registered for the events, and I'm looking over some information that you have on your website. And I want to start following up, and I called in and I said, let me just see if I get through. Maybe your pep talk will give me a little boost.
Well, it sounds like you've started with the right parts. This is something I found in sort of my career that seems to be common with many, many other people in IT through the years, is that I started as someone who was delivering printer cables, plugging in and replacing hard drives, upgrading memory, plugging in monitors. I would put a monitor in the truck, drive to a place, pull the monitor out, pull it into an office, put the monitor on a desk, plug it in, and leave. They sign the paper and I'm done. That was my job. And I thought, I got a 4-year degree in business, and now I'm just delivering monitors and plugging them in. At that point, I didn't see the path. I wanted to see the path. That eventually led to a corporate help desk position, which then led to really led to desktop management, then network management, and then IT security. So there was no way I could see that path from where I was back in the day. But that's one of the great parts about IT. I think that's one of the great enabling things about IT is you simply have to kind of jump in the water. And what you're going to find is that the water will sort of lead you the right direction. Suddenly the river takes a turn and suddenly you're pulled another direction down this road. And you had no idea you were going to go there. One of the advantages I think that you have is some practical experience. You got practical experience on the web side. You got practical experience on the Java side. You got practical experience on the database side. You're putting together all the building blocks. And that's, I think, the best thing you can do at the beginning, because now's the point where you want to maybe direct the path of the water. Maybe you want to steer the boat a little bit over to server management, desktop management, network management on the Cisco side. You certainly have a feeling of where you would like to go with that. And you can lead yourself down that road. I think that's what you should be doing at this point. You've kind of got the foundations of what you need: formal education, some practical experience. You know people in the industry. You have plenty of hands-on. Now it's the time you start taking advantage of that and sort of molding it to fit what you want to do next. We often hear people talk about interview questions and saying, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? I think a better question to ask yourself is simply, what do you want to do next? That's really the most important question. Once I get to the next place, then I'll figure out where I want to go from there. Can we just get to this next thing? And usually after you've done the things that you've done, you kind of understand the things you like and the things you don't like about technology. And now you can start to lead yourself down that direction. So just figure out, what do I want to do next? And then it should be relatively easy to figure out, what do I do now to get there? Do I need to get more certifications? Do I need to join a user group? Do I need to meet people at that company? Do I need to start monitoring the job postings of that company? You now got the options. So now you get to decide what to do. You're in a pretty good position. Many people would be lucky to be in the position you're in. Now you just need to take advantage of it.
That is true. That's where I think I'm like, okay, I'm not confused about what I wanted to do, but I was looking at certain things. I was like, I've been procrastinating too long, and it looks like I do have a little bit of experience of the stuff. I like the stuff. And as a matter of fact, I'm doing it every now and then inside the office that I worked. And I'm like, okay, I think a certification under my belt will do me pretty great.
I think it's a motivating factor. One of the great things about getting away from procrastination is that it disappears the moment you stop procrastinating. The moment you now do something like study for this certification, like look at the job postings for this job you're interested in, now the procrastination part suddenly is gone. It's over. It just ended immediately. There's no gradual, I'm getting out of it's over. You're now done procrastinating. It's now action time. And all you have to do is just reach out and grab it. IT is a great place to be doing this. You would not be able to do this in almost any other type of industry. It's hard to do this in transportation. It's hard to do this in medicine. It's hard to do this in manufacturing. But IT, you can just decide, what do I want to be next year? And you can go do that. And there's a job there to do that with. So what a great position to be in.
So definitely. So thank you for you to even tell me that, and I'm gonna continue following the videos, joining the events as they come along, and getting it ready. I already downloaded some of these CompTIA 101 exam objectives. So I'm looking at them right now. I'm going over some of the stuff. Maybe I'll look over on Amazon over to your books and find out. I'm strictly going to stick with the videos also because they're very interesting.
It's the best place to be.
On.
You're going to do just fine then. I think you're on exactly the right track. Best of luck.
All right. Thank you, Professor Messer. Have a nice day. Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too. It's a good position to be in when you start building. And I mentioned this earlier, people are trying to get started. Here's the next phase. You've now gotten started. You've gotten that formal education. You know some of the technologies. Now you just decide where you want to go. When I started my career in IT, delivering the monitor and putting it on people's desks, I knew what I wanted to do next. I didn't know where it would lead me, though. And that's kind of the part that's exciting to me, is that there is a much bigger path out there. When I started in IT, there was no internet. So that changed everything. You know, there's these constant changes in IT. Even what you think it's going to be in 5 years, it's going to be completely different anyway. So just keep your focus there, and I think you'll be fine. Let's go to 661. Hello, caller. Which name are you calling from? 661. Are you there, LA? It says Los Angeles, but I never know if the 661 is going to be LA. So we didn't happen to make that one happen. That's okay. I'm going to stick you in the queue, and we'll come to another caller on my backyard, 850 area code. Hello, caller. Which name are you calling from?
I'm Daniel. I am calling from right down the street in Tallahassee, Florida.
Hey, Daniel. What can we do for you?
Well, me and a few friends of mine have actually just decided to start getting started on the 1001, 1002.
Great.
And we're still trying to think of a plan of attack for this and debating on whether we want to study for both tests and go, front back study all 1001, all 1002, all videos, all exam prep, and then try to take the exams close to back by doing, pre-prep ahead of time. What recommendation do you have for doing that, or just exclusively studying for one test, take the test, then turn around and do the other one?
Back in the 600 and 700 series of the exam, there was it was a pretty good strategy to try to study for both exams at the same time and take them as close together as each other, because one exam would talk to you about hardware and the other exam would ask you to troubleshoot the hardware. So there was a lot of overlap between those two exams. Maybe 80% of these exams was overlap. Well, CompTIA realized that probably wasn't very effective for many people. And so for the last few versions of the exam, they worked very hard to make the exams self-contained units. So everything that you're going to learn on the Core 1 exam is pretty self-contained to the Core 1. When you shift over to the Core 2 exam, you will find there's not a lot of overlap between the two. Relatively little overlap, especially considered to be what it used to be in the past, but almost no overlap between those two. And so the strategy that was popularized early on by taking both of these at the same time suddenly became a very bad strategy, suddenly became the worst strategy I could think of, because there's a lot to learn on both of these exams. They are massive exams on their own. So the strategy that I recommend to people today is to focus on a single exam at the time. CompTIA doesn't care what order you take them in. You could take the Core 2 first and then take the Core 1, or you could take the Core 1 first and then take the Core 2. But I say that you should study one exam, study those exam objectives, learn everything you need to know for that first exam, learn everything that's in the exam objectives, take the exam, pass the exam, then shift gears and start studying for the next exam. And what you're going to find is that there's not going to be a lot of overlap in those two. For instance, people in the chat room even mentioning hardware, networking, printers, and cloud services are all in the Core 1 exam. That's what you're going to be asked about. On the Core 2 exam, it's about Microsoft, it's about Mac OS, it's about Linux, it's about security. You're not going to get printers questions on the Core 2 exam. You're not going to get questions about SAS and PASS on the Core 2 exam. You're not going to get questions, a lot of networking questions on the Core 2 exam. So my recommendation, and I think it's probably a good recommendation, is to focus on a single exam at a time, do as much as you study as you can, get the best score that you possibly can, and only then shift your gears over and start working on that second exam.
All right, that helps a lot. I really appreciate that.
I think the best testing center in Tallahassee is Computer Tutor, but there may be another one. I think, I don't know if TCC is still doing testing for CompTIA. They have a very good testing center too, but I'm not sure that that's a Pearson VUE testing center. But make sure you check around town. Make sure you find the best place for you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling. Let's see if we can go back to that 661 very quickly. See if they ever picked up there. Hi, 661. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, it just did not work out, did it? That's okay. We'll try to make it happen next time. Instead, we'll go to 708. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Charles. I'm calling from Chicago.
Hey, Charles. What can we do for you?
First off, I want to say thank you for all the resources you provide for free, let alone not charging for some other stuff. But I've been doing computer stuff since I was about 17. I'm 27 now, so 10 years roughly.
Sure.
And I've been looking at jobs in my area, and they offering some, and some of them you need to be A+ certified. So I did go to college for 2 years and have certificates and degrees, but some of the stuff that I'm reading, I know some of the stuff already. And I'm just thinking, would it be smart for me to just try to take it first and then purchase the extra exam if I fail it, or go through all the study guides and like prepare myself for it? What would you recommend?
Well, the A+ exams themselves are not inexpensive exams. If you're taking it just cold without any, or you're taking it without any type of academic discount, you're spending a few $100s on a single exam. They're expensive exams. So I highly recommend, even if you've got knowledge in the industry, you've been doing this for a while, you're very familiar with the technology, you're very familiar with the terms that are used, I would still grab the exam objectives and use it as a checklist. You may find a couple of things pop up on the exam objectives that you haven't run into. So I'm very familiar with on the PC side of things, but I got the exam objectives for this latest version, and I saw that they listed Zigbee, Z-Wave on this, and I thought Zigbee and Z-Wave, I need to become more familiar with those two because I only knew them from at a very tertiary level, at a very broad level by having products in my home that had those, but I didn't know the detailed differences between the two. So that was a good opportunity to learn more about those two types of exam objectives. You'll find a couple of those things on the exam objectives, but if you're familiar with these things over the past 10 years, you may find that you're able to check a huge part of the exam objectives, but that may get you a couple extra points on the exam. And if you're paying big money for this, it's worth it to spend about a week to go through this and make sure you know everything that you're expected to know.
Yeah, all right. Then I have one more question. The networking part of the security does it require any programming or coding? Because I mean, I took programming class. It was like Visual Basic and C#, but it wasn't Python that I keep seeing showing up. And I'm trying to see if I got to take a whole nother programming level course just in order to do networking security and stuff like that.
Well, fortunately, the A+ certification, and when you get into, there's a section on scripting on the Core 2 exam. It does not expect you to know how to script. It does not expect you to understand the nuances of VB script versus Python versus a shell script in Linux. But it does expect you to be able to look at one of those scripts and know what it is, or at least have an understanding of where you would use that script and how a VB script is different than Python, is different than a shell script, is different than a batch file. And if you've got a familiarity already in programming, you probably already know those things off the top of your head. All you'd have to do is kind of skim over what those are and make sure that you can recognize them on site.
All right, then the last question before I let you go is, I'm in the process of purchasing a book now, and I heard you say you have the physical copy and the digital copy as well. How long is the estimated wait for the physical copy?
Well, the physical copies, if you're getting my course notes, they usually will. I say they'll ship out in 2 to 3 business days. They usually ship out the next business day, and they're sent via U.S. Postal Service. So it's usually 2 to 3 day shipping. They ship out of Minnesota, so they're kind of in a central area of the world.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
That's
it gets
close
to
me.
usually people within the United States get it within a week, and you're good to go.
So, all right, thank you so much. I'm going to continue watching the live.
Best of luck, Charles.
Some more information.
Appreciate you
All right,
calling.
Best of luck, Charles.
There you go. I heard myself say best of luck. And I do mean it. That's I find that's exciting. When you're first getting started with this, you're getting the certification, you're getting that check mark. It's not the end. It's just the beginning. There's so many things that will happen now once you get to that point, and so many other certifications you're going to be taking. Let's go 661. That sounds familiar. Are you there, caller? Which name are you calling from? That's 661, man. You're having a
Hi there.
Oh, there you are. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello. Oh, hi. Sorry. I missed it out last time, I guess.
What can we do for you?
Oh, hi. I have like a couple of questions. Thanks for calling. I'm sorry, Henry. Sorry. Okay. I've recently started A+, but I'm into AWS. And I was thinking, should I do A+ and Microsoft Server and other things to relate to AWS, or should I get into AWS directly?
All of these technologies are perfectly valid and at demand with a demand in the industry. So Amazon Web Services, for those of you not familiar with AWS, Microsoft certifications certainly have a high demand, and A+ itself is one that's one of the highest demanded for the entry-level IT certifications. This is more of a question I need to kind of spin around, which is, what do you want to do with this? What is the end goal of getting these certifications?
Well, my first goal was to get into the IT industry. And I've been with IT more or less like good few years, like 5-7 years or 10 years. But I don't have any industry certification. But I do know the basics about networking or, let's say, Windows Server and all sort of like basic things. But I want to get into either AWS or Microsoft's cloud computing. I don't know whether if I need to do A+ or Microsoft Server 12 or 16 and so on.
Well, this is one of those situations where I mentioned earlier, you only have to know what do you want to do next. So if you think your end goal or what you would like to be able to do is more cloud computing and to be able to work on Amazon Web Service, or not even Amazon's cloud, an Amazon Web Service certification gives you knowledge that you can use in other cloud-based services too, but it's a very popular certification. That may be the way to go. You may find that server administration really, really interests you, even if those servers are based in the cloud, and a Microsoft certification or an Azure certification may even make more sense for what you're trying to do. Maybe your organization is very focused on Microsoft, or maybe your organization is very focused. It has a huge presence on the Amazon cloud. That may be the thing that makes you decide what direction to go. That's really the question. I think all three of those are good choices. It just depends on what you want to do with them.
I was just wondering at some point, if I want to pursue any cloud computing platform, then do I need any prerequisite as like server or any sort of like prerequisite for cloud computing, or if I want to just jump into cloud computing right away and then study and get it done?
Well, they sort of build on each other in many ways. Having a knowledge on the Microsoft side might help you be able to design a cloud-based platform for Microsoft a little bit better. But then you also get situations where knowing the Amazon side would give, because the cloud piece itself is, there's a huge requirement for cloud that doesn't necessarily rely on any particular operating system. But having a knowledge of Windows and having a knowledge of Linux is going to help you a lot if you move into the cloud infrastructure.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Professor.
I appreciate you calling. Best of luck. It's one of those where it depends on what you want to do and where you want to go with it. For those of you asking in the chat room about calling in Skype, you can use the number that's on your screen. You can call in via Skype by putting a +1 855-785-7545. No cost to do that through Skype. So I pay for that. There is a cost. I take care of it. You don't have to pay for it. That's the benefit. Let's go to 610. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hi, Dominic calling from Philadelphia.
Hey, Dominic. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
So my question is, I guess, so I took the 220 way back about a year or so now ago, the 220-901, and I failed by a few points, unfortunately. So I went back and I realized at that time the exams were switching over to the 220 or the 220 1001, 1002.
Right.
So I knew you couldn't mix.
Yep.
So I went back and studied now, and I got my exam coming up for the 1001. So I guess my question would be, any advice for anybody who failed maybe the 901 or the 1001 going back to retake?
I do.
Guess.
Because you're not the only one in that particular situation. If you go to my website, professormesser.com/objectives, on that page is a link to the CompTIA Objectives. I have a link there. Click here to be redirected. But I've also got links here that highlight the additions since the 900 series exams. So if you click on the 220-1001 exam objectives with highlighted additions since the 220-901, it's a list of the current exam objectives, but every time you see something highlighted, this is something that has been added since the 900 series. So if you spent a lot of time, it sounds like you were almost done on the 901, you could go through this list of 901 and say, well, port replicator is new, AR headsets is new, USB-C is new. But you'll notice a lot of this is the same. Only 20% of the exam is different, but 20% is a lot when it comes to the final grade. But at least you'd be able to go through this list and see DHCP, LDAP, and SMTP port numbers are new. The difference between a managed and an unmanaged switch is new. We talked about that in the first hour. Cloud-based network controllers, network interface cards, cable DSL modems, switches, Ethernet over power. Almost everything in Section 2.3 is new. So you can at least go through this list and see if there's anything you might have missed. Also, I tell people, don't study from older books. Don't study from older. But if that's all you have and you really just want to know what the differences are, you might want to be able to use this list and at least be able to know where you need to shore up some of the things that you are missing in an older book.
Yeah, thank you so much. That definitely answered my question there. I'm going to definitely look into that list.
Perfect.
I wasn't aware of until now. So thank you so much.
Best of luck, Dominic.
Thanks. Goodbye.
That's fantastic. And that's why I made the list, because there was a lot of people, they spent so much time studying for that 900 series, and then you end up, there's no time left. You end up, there's no runway. The runway ends, and now you have to shift gears. And when you shift gears like that, you have to know at least where you're going to go with that. And at least now you can check off those things. Like, well, do I have to know this all over again? They're in a different format. They're arranged differently on the 1000 series. They're in a different place. Some of them have moved from one exam to the other, but at least from this list, you'll know where you can focus your efforts. And maybe that's something that can help you too as you're going through all of these things as well. Well, that brings us to the end of another hour, really just over an hour of Q&A. I want to thank you for joining us in our first hour, where I asked you the questions, and the second hour, where you asked me the questions. I think we always have a good time with that. That was for our 220-1001 study group. Come back in a couple of days. On Thursday, we do this again, except it's with the 220-1002, the Core 2 exam. And I have a whole new set of questions. We'll open up the phone lines again and focus on 1002 and anything else you'd like to talk about in the questions after. It doesn't have to be A+. It can be anything that is of interest to you and that you would like to ask about. Thanks for being here, though. We love to have these live events, and it would not be the same if you weren't here asking those questions. So we really, really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group.